Welcome to the Postgame. I'm Michael Brooks. Welcome, patrons. Welcome, super producer Matt Leck, super producer David Slavic, head theoretician David Grishcom, and the great Nida Kahn.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be here.
Thank you for returning.
Of course, anytime.
I'm sure it will be many more times. Just navigating a few things in our new studio here. Basically, Sam does these additions where he's just like, your microphone's here now. And then it's like, okay, but nothing else that I need is. And then I'm calm and chill about it. If he had to deal with like a fraction of what I dealt with, he would be like, God damn it! Can't work. Do you see? He'd be all red in the face. Well, what are you going to do? I guess other than, meditate.
Right.
Chill.
Musa, breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah. Musa Kusa.
Something like that.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, Musa Kusa. That'd be fun. All right, let's go straight to the phones. We're not doing IMs, I don't think. I guess theoretically we could. No, we want to push people to the Discord. So we have the Discords open. We're going to take some calls, and we have some sound to get to. You're calling from a 733 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 733. Are you there?
This is Uchiwali.
Uchiwali. How are you, my friend?
Oh, that's 733. That's 773.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
My mistake.
This is probably be a short call. I sided with Nida in your conversation with hip hop. She's got much better taste than you, my friend.
What was even the debate though?
Thank you.
Well, this is just his shtick.
Garbage, dude.
I didn't say Migos was. I didn't say Migos was good.
That is one
I
thing
was
about-
asking
Okay.
about
Fair
current
enough.
favorites,
Yeah.
sir.
You did not.
I did not.
My apologies. In
You
retrospect,
took
you did
me
not.
out of context, and that's defamatory.
It's okay.
Oh,
You
look,
can
I'm
diss
learning
him
from
anytime.
I'm learning from Sam Harris. I like this.
No.
Just a complete lack of charity.
I will say that
Migos is the best
one thing
rap
that-
group. Wait. I'm sorry. I'm going to finish this for a second.
Go ahead.
Migos is the best rap group ever. Now quote that back to me.
I can't.
No.
Okay, you took me out of context. All right, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah.
I do realize in retrospect you did not say that. I think it's also important to recognize that Trump actually did the intro to one of Method Man's albums. Have you heard this?
Did he?
I did
don't
not know
remember.
that.
I don't remember that.
Crack
Yeah,
research
there's
team.
actually-
Wow.
If you even if you have Matt do a search on YouTube for Method Man Trump, you should see there's I think it was Stephen Colbert maybe has an interview where he mentions it and they talk about it. And Method Man, I still respect him because he said he regretted it.
I know that Snoop has gone overtime in putting out his Instagram videos.
Right.
Like fuck him. He's a blah blah. Actually, the thing. This was a long time ago. It's like a roast, like in 2011. They roasted Trump.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
They did. I remember.
Yeah, and all of the people did, it's all like, Mr. Trump, like, you're a great real estate guy, and you probably have herpes, like, all jokes that he would be like, oh, wow, yeah. And then Snoop went up there, and Snoop was like, maybe you should run for president. Like, it wouldn't be the first time you kicked a black family out of their home. And it was so awesome because Trump actually had, like, the great thing about Trump is that he was like, he was pissed. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you point out I'm racist? It's terrible.
I remember that.
Oh, man. Anything, Uchiwali, anything else besides you're taking me out of context and hip-hop scholarship?
You cut me too quick because I was planning on bitching about your poor taste in hip-hop, and then you pointed out that I was wrong. So
It's okay. You can
I will
diss him
say
anytime
that
you want.
I don't see the link to your live feed on the on your Patreon page yet. So
It'll be there.
Okay, it'll be there.
Thank you, sir.
Matt's like, it'll be there,
Keep up the good
snitch.
work.
Thank you, Uchiwali. Much appreciated.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. You're calling from a 972 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. It's Ben the Nanny from Seattle. I called into MR once. Thanks for the shout-out. last week on the show about the employee head tax.
Oh, yeah,
in
absolutely.
Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really cool. The big business in the area is definitely still trying to get rid of it. They have like a big. I think they're trying to put a something on the ballot to have us vote on it, but I wouldn't worry about it. But,
Okay, that's great.
It was So it's going well. It wasn't the full amount that Shama Sawant and us were asking for, but it was still pretty good.
Okay.
The reason why I wanted to call was I just wanted to just dunk on these Bitcoin nerds.
Sure.
I fucking hate them.
Okay.
I don't know.
Unless any of them are patrons, then they're cool. But besides that, I agree.
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and yeah, they should just send me some because,
Well, they should maybe send the show some.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
But okay, yes, trash. I just was watching an interview this morning with Yanis Varoufakis about this, so it's very fortuitous that you mentioned this. Go for it.
Yeah. So there was I don't want to cross the extremes between MR and TMBS, but there was a IM about how Bitcoin is going to start using more power than solar at a certain point, and just like how fucking ludicrous that is.
Yes, it's really bad for the environment.
It's terrible. And there's even like another aspect of it to where I live in Seattle. There's like a ton of people in the tech industry, and a big growing industry here is people working in VR, virtual reality stuff. And one of the core things that people need to be able to like make these computers that run VR stuff, and sort of this like tech utopian dream that we're all going to get like our own like holodeck where we can like fuck orc ladies or whatever. But
that's very alarming to me, but I think you're probably right.
I mean, I don't want to be too real, but that's basically what these people want. But
I don't want to be too real.
What was the?
That's so fucked up. I believe you. I believe you. You don't have to prove anything.
I just thought of the Dave Chappelle "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong."
I can send you the DeviantArt link.
I believe you. Yeah, keeping it real goes wrong with the tech industry is a whole other. We're living in that world right now. Yes.
Oh, it's terrible. But one of the key parts to building computers that can run these fancy, super powerful VR games, and it's like beyond gaming. Apparently, I don't know. I still think it's like a rich person thing. But that's just me.
Right.
But like to be able to run it, you have to use graphics processing units, which are like GPUs. It's video cards. It's what you use in like a fancy gaming computer. But that's also the same kind of part of the computers that are used predominantly for mining Bitcoin. So what's happening is it pushed up the cost for the part of computers that makes VR more of like a possibility for the average consumer. So because of their obsession with making this libertarian coin nonsense, we're not going to actually get something that people actually can use.
So basically, I loved what Yanis Varoufakis said, is he said that the main driving of the mythology of Bitcoin is the idea that you can have a currency that isn't political. And I think that's really the essence of it.
Perfect.
It's just a fantasy. And the idea that you can escape from macroeconomics and power distribution just because you have the internet behind it. And I'm also, I'm fresh off of going through some of, and he was on Majority Report, and I had to read some of his book, Yasha Levine's book on the military in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's just this utter fantasy that you can escape from other structures of power,
It's
because of some like tech fantasy. I mean, I think when you read the stuff that people were writing in the 90s, it was at least more. It was historically understandable how you could have that fantasy life. Today, unless you have unless your investment in tech fantasy is literally like, if you've done so well in it that you're on a jet to the Mayweather McGregor fight, there's no other reason that you should believe in this, right? Like, unless if you're actually making the money. Besides that, you got to get out of this fantasy. I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. You are calling from a 646 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm just tired right now, but this is Monique. So
Hello,
I'll
Monique.
Just say it real quick. And Texas, everything was Texas and Mexico, right? So, like California, weren't they here first?
Actually,
where did the Europeans come from?
Matt, was Texas? What was part of Mexico? Was that California and Texas, or what? Or New Mexico? It was all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the specifics of.
And Europeans, I don't believe they were born here, right? Yeah. Okay. And they're
No,
going
they
to
were
tell
not.
people to leave where they came from to come here. I'm done with. You're going to tell people where to leave. Okay. Right?
Right. Yeah. Right. You're right.
And you know what's pretty funny about that, Monique? I'm from
Like,
Well, wait. David Grisham has something to tell you from Texas. David.
oh, he does?
Yeah, well, I'm from Texas, and what's really incredible about Texas is a lot of the people who are always coming and telling Mexicans, people of Hispanic or Mexican origin to leave Texas are white people who moved to Texas
From
10, 15 years ago.
Right.
Like they're not even from Texas.
Right.
Right.
Isn't it's incredible. Like even African Americans, okay, you're going to tell us to go back to our country. Well, y'all brought us here. We wouldn't be here if nobody questions that either, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, the only people that should be allowed to say go back to where you came from are the natives. I mean, they're the only ones who have the grounds to say something like that. Yeah.
I'll tell people to go wherever I want to fucking tell them to go. Go back to your caves, devils. Go back to your caves, devils.
Michael.
Sister Monique.
I know.
Sister Monique.
But
Sister Monique, you got to stop trying to understand this devil's motivations. Never will.
No,
It's not your nature.
The voice I want to hear. You know the one I want to hear.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, the voice you want to hear would probably
that's
say.
what they think with South Africa.
Oh,
Same thing.
Right.
yes.
That they going to tell people, real talk, but for real. Like, how dare you? And nobody else says this to them. Then y'all should have stayed in Europe.
You know what? Actually, I want to say real quick, because I want to get to a clip that's going to reflect.
I know you.
No. LeBron is actually saying basically what you're saying in a second. So we're going to do that in a sec when you get off. But I want to say I've got some content planned around what's happening in South Africa because a big internet meme lie that you're going to hear from alt-right in the next, and you already have, but it's going to emerge stronger and stronger, is going to be about land reappropriation in South Africa, which is in the 1994 Rainbow Constitution. It's already in there, and it's a question of economics, and Ronnie Casrels and I talked about it on this show a couple weeks ago, but that's something that I'm planning a lot more content around. But I would also just add, Monique, that somebody does want to say that.
What are you going to say? Reappropriation of land? Like,
Yeah,
that's essential.
I don't know about that. So
it needs to happen in South Africa. The content coming. But meanwhile, stop being snowflakes. Afrikaners forever.
No. Don't cut me off. Don't cut me off and say that. But
I
real
gotta-
talk, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Like real talk. Well, that's the same thing. Well, you know what? Mexican Americans could say the same thing. They could say this was their land.
Yeah.
They could.
Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Nope, you're right, Monique. And Michael, you're right too, because that is a talking point that's already starting.
That's coming.
Actually,
Yes.
That's coming.
What's his name? Tucker Carlson is already talking
Yeah.
about how they need to be protected as the minority.
Well, he's the pipeline. When he starts saying, well, don't they need to be protected as a minority?
Right.
That's when that starts coming.
Stop joking, but
I'm not joking.
But-
I'm not joking.
Yeah,
you know,
he's
sometimes
being
I do
serious.
impressions of these people because it expresses my hatred for them.
Right.
It's not a joke.
And true
I know.
story. True
Yeah.
story. When I was in South Africa.
Yeah. Wait, hold on.
It annoys me because it scares me because they don't understand and they don't, and they feel like they have, I don't know how do you say, like that's the way they feel, like it's their land. No, learn history. You don't know. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna let you go.
Appreciate. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for the call. For real. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So what were you?
I was going to say, I forgot what year it was, but I did an op-ed for the Daily News actually about South Africa and how so much of the land, the farmland and the mining and everything is still owned by the Afrikaners. And that's like the one thing that the majority of the population, the black and the mixed population never got control of.
Right.
And I was going to say, true story, when I was there, whatever year that was, I can't remember, 2010 or 2012, I actually got stuck on Table Mountain until 2 a.m. because there were some sort of blackouts that they were implementing. And so I was stuck on there with like 1,000 other tourists.
Right.
Fascinating story.
It's the second liberation that, I mean, it's in there. This is LeBron James. I can't really, I mean, I guess I could explain it to you if you're listening to this, but you really should watch this. I actually saw this Saturday night when I was watching the game, and I was kind of like, did that actually happen?
I didn't see this.
Apparently, yeah, it actually happened. Basically, there's a fan that's trying to get LeBron's attention, and LeBron's, whatever else you say about LeBron's a super nice guy, and LeBron is going to blow him off. It's pretty funny, and you'll see why.
Coming up the third at halftime with Michelle, Jalen, Chauncey, and Paul.
Wow, what a diss.
Basically, this guy who's wearing a Make America Great Again hat, I don't know what he wants LeBron to toss at him. It looks actually like a towel or something, which, like, God knows why you would want a towel from a player. It's disgusting. But he's doing like, hey, throw it to me, buddy. And LeBron just like looks over him and tosses it on the floor. Like,
and the look on his face when he turns around. Yeah,
he's just like, all right, like now on top of carrying this whole team of bums to like probably another NBA series, I got to look at this motherfucker in the Make America Great Again hat. Fuck you. So shouts to LeBron, even though I am rooting for the Celtics.
That's like how you know where to dive into the crowd if there's like a loose ball or something. Like I got some, like really go. You can really hustle in that part of the court.
Right. Don't worry about it. Don't be gentle. We have a new segment on the postgame where we do blind item Alex Jones. This is an Alex Jones clip that I have not seen or heard yet, and we all watch and hear it afresh. This is an older one. This is vintage Alex. And let's hear now again from the greatest broadcaster of our generation.
And will be separate from society, and they predicted less than 1% would not join, and that by 2025, the large portions of the public would be inserted into pods. What? And that wiring and chips would be added to the brain. Now, this is the Pentagon. And that they would slowly phase it out and that people would voluntarily enter it. Then they had that movie came out a few years ago with Bruce Willis where everybody lives at home and they have their biological surrogates. You know, they have this electronic android that goes out for them. All Pentagon, all laid out. And you're going, well, that's just Pentagon theorizing. No, that's the plan. That's the plan, and that's the level before they go to the pod, and that's where the whole matrix comes from. The Pentagon plan is that you're going to live in a tank, okay? And you can say, well, that's not going to happen. Well, folks, they're trying is the point. You're going to live in a tank and be tied into this virtual world. And look, people already spend real money in all these Second Life video games and all the rest of it and pay thousands of dollars for wardrobes and Ferraris. And they even meet women and become prominent, And the system makes them celebrities, a few of them, to make you all pile in. And so if people are already ready to give up their money to be part of an imaginary world by the millions, there's a whole bunch of different systems. What are they going to do? Philip K. Dick wrote about this 30 years ago, the wireheads. And it turns out Philip K. Dick, I've talked to people that know his family well. The family, I'm going to just leave it at that. I'm not... Well, his house was broken into. He was being followed by the government. Family didn't believe it till they witnessed it. Dick lived in San Francisco, knew some of the Futurist Society people, knew some of the, the Organization of Psychedelic Research, which had a bunch of government connections. I'm not going to get into what they're interfacing with, but... They believe they're in contact with off-world groups. I mean, this is what the government's into, folks. They're taking the DMT. They've got the black op commanders gobbling high-powered hallucinogens in. See, I don't even get into all this stuff.
I want to get into government.
We're in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. We're in trouble. The Clockwork Elves, all of it, I shouldn't even get into it. But the issue here is that whether this stuff's real or not, the globalists think it is. And the elves are telling them, come on, join us, plug in, it's going to happen. People read Dick's stuff 30 years ago and they go, how did it all come true? Because he had government connections, ladies and gentlemen. PKD was being fed this stuff, and he got several of his novels stolen and got threatened, and a lot of other stuff happened. But all right, I'm now ranting.
Okay, that last part was great.
All right, you need to take that as a drop. For sure. That needs to be a drop. Grisham, you seem super charged up about this clip. Do you have any thoughts out of the gate?
Oh, I need to know what Clockwork Elves are.
I can maybe make a guess.
Yeah, I would like to
there's
hear
something,
that.
and I'm not an expert on this, but it's weird because a lot of things he mentions there, like the psychedelic research and stuff.
There was psychedelic research by the CIA and the intelligence services. That's all real.
Right.
We have MK Ultra.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And but like I think there's something where people take ayahuasca or something and see these little like elf type of things.
That's
right?
what you think he's talking about?
I think he's mentioning that. It's sort of like a Jungian thing, right? Like a sort of like archetype.
It's like a Jungian archetype.
Yeah.
Wow, it's
you
been a long
better be
time.
mathematically precise when you talk about racism. Now, anyways, witches are things.
It's been a long time since I've seen an Alec Jones clip, and gotta say it's still disturbing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, just
you haven't
the fact
gotten to
that
the point where you just dig what a great showman he is.
No, I mean, just the fact that he's got like millions of followers. I mean, I can't.
I think his followers might disturb him more than they disturb you.
Probably.
If you ever look at a clip of him interfacing with his fans.
Maybe.
I
don't watch. I can't.
I can, and I do. We all do. Let's talk about Latin America for a second. Do you have thoughts on the Venezuelan election?
That was a very interesting segue.
Yeah. Well, it's all part of a plan.
It's all part
it was all part of the same agenda.
We're going into.
Yeah.
We're going into the pods. I will say this about what's going on in Venezuela. It is very clear that we, as in the United States, have a very keen interest in making sure that Maduro is no longer there. Even, I believe it was just yesterday, the White House did a background briefing call or something talking about everything, how their elections were a sham and how they need to be basically discounted. And one of the journalists on the call asked a question about, well, what makes what's happening there different than other regimes or other places where there are dictators or people in government and we're not doing anything about it. And the White House's response was simply, well, we'll refer you to the State Department and ask them. So I would say, again, that it's a lot of politics going on, and to look at things with a grain of salt, or take things with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's another area where, people have asked me a lot what I think about this, and like, we can say that project as it stands now, Chavismo, Maduro, it's a failure. We can be honest about that. Now.
And people are suffering.
And people are absolutely suffering.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt. Yeah. Now, you also know the illicit histories, like, that we've done on this show. And you know that, like, one of the reasons that Jamaica got so pressed in the 70s, yes, Michael Manley was, I would put Michael Manley in a different category altogether than a Nicolas Maduro, but he was certainly not blameless or failless. But there also was a CIA destabilization campaign in his country. Mm-hmm. And I would just say that I will not make excuses for the Maduro government, and nobody should. Period. It's really just a fool's errand and a fantasy, in my opinion. And our primary concern as United States citizens, if you're listening to this United States, if you're listening from, Venezuela and you're trying to figure out how to chart a course here, that's something that we really need to actually think about, I think, as people who are interested in like solidarity with actual movements. And that's really hard to figure out the right political alignment there. But don't make any excuses for the government. Don't sort of run interference. And also realize that like we've been on a coup setting. I mean, there was one under George W. Bush, which failed, and which we supported, and which the New York Times backed when it looked successful. The Obama administration categorized Venezuela as a threat to national security, which is insane. Right. And Trump administration officials have spoken openly about instigating a military coup there. And that is just the primary and paramount thing to oppose. Period. And a false defense of the current Venezuelan government does not. It's not dependent on that. You can
have two thoughts at the same time. You can criticize people. You can talk about the horrors that are taking place, how people are actually suffering, and you can also criticize the fact that there is a very real effort to remove people from power.
Absolutely. I think more to the point, I would say too, is like I think for their flaws and their mistakes. In Brazil, we have a leadership which we actually can really forthrightly defend. And I definitely see a certain U.S. hand going back to the spying on Dilma Rousseff, which was revealed in Edward Snowden's revelations. And I have no doubt that part of the Petrobras scandal in Brazil does have something to do with the fact that Lula kept that in public hands and didn't privatize it. And there's actually an interview that I read with Lula's foreign minister and Dilma's defense minister, which makes precisely that argument. And I just want to play this clip briefly to go back and forth with you on in a second. This happened 2 weeks ago. Do you need a second? This happened a couple of weeks ago. There was an unprecedented coordination of union movements in Brazil that went, and also other social movements that did a mass march for the release of Lula from prison, because obviously there's not going to be a real presidential election that takes place there while he's the leading candidate and imprisoned. And this is a report from the Real News Network. We'll play a bit of and then get your response.
This Workers' Day in Brazil was like no other. Thousands traveled from across the country to the city of Curitiba in southern Brazil. They came in caravans of buses, riding overnight or even for several days. This was the first time that all 7 of Brazil's major trade union federations have united for Workers' Day since the fall of the country's military dictatorship in 1985.
E esse 1º de maio é histórico porque ele une não só as centrais sindicais, mas une também as duas frentes, a Frente Brasil Popular e a Frente Povo Sem Medo, numa unidade da classe trabalhadora nunca vista antes do nosso país. Lula, guerreiro do povo brasileiro.
They are united behind one common goal, freeing Lula. For the last month, former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been serving time in this federal prison in Curitiba. In a controversial trial, judges convicted him of corruption for allegedly accepting a beachside apartment from a company seeking government contracts. He was sentenced to 12 years. But Lula and Brazilian workers say he's innocent. They believe his imprisonment is just a ruse to knock him out of the running for this year's presidential elections. Despite prison, Lula is still well ahead in the polls.
What do you think of this situation?
Yeah, and these protests have been going on for a long time. Like this, was showing the consolidation of those protests. And I think it's interesting that you see this happening not only in Brazil, but in many places around the world where you're seeing mobilization of workers and of unions and of movements and of people. But at the same time, you have an effort to consolidate power from those who are already in power. I mean, you see that everywhere. Even here, like if you look at the teachers that have been striking, trying to get more funding and more money for themselves so they can actually do a better job of teaching students. And you see that, and you see more and more of an effort to just keep power away from people themselves. And obviously you're seeing this, of course, in Brazil. I mean, look at the huge backing that has been going on there for a long time now.
Yeah. Absolutely. You also mentioned, and I think, one of the most important and inspiring things, but also the context for it is totally disgusting, but one of the most important things happening in the United States, certainly, are those teacher strikes that are happening across the country. And this is a good time to remind everybody who our Secretary of Education is. And this exchange, I mean, we just keep finding these clips. It should be mentioned that the head of this committee, Virginia Fox, I believe her name is, from North Carolina, is a bagwoman for the student loan industry and has gone out of her way in every way, shape, and form to harm students and, of course, promote the rest of the Republican agenda of a poorer, sicker, dumber America. But this is a exchange with Congresswoman Fudge from Ohio and Betsy DeVos. It starts around Pell Grants and expands to basic questions about civil rights, which shockingly Betsy DeVos is not able to answer in a satisfactory way.
Much, and thank you so much, Madam Secretary, for being here. We've been anxiously awaiting your visit for about 16 months. It's a pleasure to see you and meet you. Let me just clear up something that my colleague just said about Pell Grants. Yeah, they probably are going up, but it's really kind of alternative facts. They're going up because we are allowing Pell to be used for more low-performing programs, just like the fraudulent for-profit schools that your department defends. So that's the real reason that they're going
up.
And Madam Secretary, the chairwoman is probably correct that education is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution, but in fact it is mentioned in law, the very same law that you were sworn to uphold and defend. Just as you are charged to ensure equal access to a quality education for all children, not some children, all children, including public school children, including English language learners, including IDEA students. And further, you are charged to ensure that all schools be held to the same standards of accountability. Now, I am concerned about the low performance of your Civil Rights Office. Could you please just state for me the mission of your Civil Rights Office?
Thanks, Congresswoman, for the question. The Office for Civil Rights is committed to protecting the civil rights as determined under the law of this land, and we do so proudly and with great focus each day.
That's not the mission statement. Do you know what it is?
Perhaps you could share it.
That's okay.
I have not memorized
that's okay.
The mission statement.
Please explain for me what you would believe to be vigorous enforcement of civil rights in the context of schools today.
It would be following the law and enforcing the law as stated.
Okay. So do you do believe that the Office of Civil Rights is following the procedures that were put in force since 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1964?
I'm sorry, do I believe that the office is following that law? Yes, indeed, I do.
And what leads you to believe they are?
I'm confident that the team assembled there, both of career staff, dedicated career staff, and political staff, has continued to focus on doing so with great professionalism.
So how did you do it if you continue to try to dismantle and defund the office? I'm not understanding.
We haven't done any such thing.
Okay. I think I've heard enough. Thank you very much. I yield.
That was great questioning.
That was great.
She was fantastic.
She's great.
I actually did not see that clip, or I don't remember seeing this clip, so thank you for showing it.
No, it happened, I believe, today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed it.
It's a fresh clip.
Okay.
Grisham.
So I have to say, at the top of the video, Virginia Fox. I actually have a personal story with her. during
board, please, Matt. You're gonna need. Wait. Or wait, maybe more. What would be the appropriate?
Mom! 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 Why did you do that to me?
All right, go ahead. Tell your story now, David.
That's a good one.
Oh, this is not as sultry as you want it to be, I promise you. Oh, this is going to sound dirty, but, you know, in around 2011, 2012, I occupied her office for...
You guys are hilarious. Poor guy can't even tell his story.
All right, now go ahead. Breaking news. You're occupying her office. You can talk over this.
Yeah, we occupied her office as part of DC's Occupy.
And then you met her.
Well, yeah, we met her and demanded to sit. So after around 10 hours of waiting in that office, I was taken off as the representative of the group to meet with Virginia Fox. And I had an absolutely absurd conversation with her about the student loan crisis, when I told her my story. You know, I come from a very poor family. I come from a very low-performing school in South Carolina. I was one of the only 3 people who were able to get out of state, accepted even.
Wow.
And, you know, and I was just talking to her about how difficult it was for me to, even with the maximum amount of financial aid, get by at, you know, at a university in Washington, D.C. And her suggestion to me was to drop out and to apply and enroll in trade school if I can't afford university.
She actually said that to you?
She actually said that to me.
Does not surprise
me.
me.
And then I left. And her chief of staff came up to me.
You try to run a little interference, like this like old horrific lunatic I work for just told this like upright young man, because that is the one thing, like that is the most, like, a proper politician would have just voted to literally make you homeless and I'd be like, you know what, young man, I'm here to represent people like you, and I have no doubt that you have the engineering. She was just like, well, if you're poor, maybe you should learn how to weld. Now get the fuck out of my office.
Pretty much. But his suggestion to me, he was trying to help me out, was even more absurd. Okay. Was that he suggested
He's like, have you ever seen the movie Risky Business? It's a 1980s Tom Cruise vehicle.
He suggested that I, try to go into University of South Carolina, go there for 4 years, and then I could apply to Howard University, which is a historically black university, and get a minority scholarship to go as a white person.
Okay, this did not happen.
I swear on everything holy that this was my experience.
Wow.
Then I have to go.
You swear on Capitol. You swear on Capitol.
That I told a bunch of beatnik hippies afterward what happened, and they were all very angry too.
God, these are the worst people on the planet.
Story. I can't.
I mean, but that's how the. I mean, this
yeah,
is
it doesn't surprise me at all.
It doesn't, but it's just the fact that it actually happened. I mean, I know it does, and this is how they are. But the fact that they actually said this to you is just insane.
She's the chair of the education committee. Let's not forget that. By the way.
Well, yeah. I mean, you saw the whole subtext of that clip was clearly she had just said something insane about the Constitution, and the congresswoman had to say like, right, just to like notate whatever the insane shit fucking nonsense the chairwoman just said, I would just like to sort of vaguely object to before I talk to the demented woman that heads the Department of Education.
Right.
That's nice.
Right. God.
Do you have any awkward politician stories that you're willing to share publicly?
Let's see. I got to think about that. I do have awkward politician stories. Oh, that was a good one. Dramatic one. Let's see. Publicly.
Semi-publicly. For a large community of patrons.
Large community of support out there.
Yes.
I don't know. I got to think about it. You got to give me a minute to come back. What is this music? I don't even know what this is. What is it?
It sounds
just
a little
generic downbeat.
Sounds a little sultry.
You can get a little funky.
Yeah, maybe like you just had. Yeah. Oh, now you got to tell the story.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good one. Because you meet so many random. I know. That's the music I get. I'm sorry.
No.
I don't know. Let's think.
All right. Sal Abernese is blowing up your cell.
No.
No.
There was a politician who used to blow up my cell, but I can't.
I know
I
that.
can't
I know.
name
I
it.
know.
can't name it
You told
publicly.
me that
Did I say
story.
the story?
Yes.
I know.
And
he's
every
actually well-known
every
now.
content part of me is itching, but
I
the
know,
friend
but we
part of me will
can't.
not
I
violate
know.
that.
We can't violate the
I'm
friend
sorry,
part.
guys. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You shouldn't even mention that was
I
out
know.
there because the
Sorry.
whole audience is gonna be thirsty for me. Could you just turn around for a second?
No.
Don't worry about it. No, seriously, just for a second.
I'm scared. Why am I turning around? What's happening?
Just 1 second.
Oh boy.
Just literally 1 second.
Oh Lord. Slowly.
If you double your Patreon membership, I will tell you who this politician is in the next Discord Q&A. All right.
Lies.
Anyways, moving
They're
forward.
all lies. All lies.
It's totally true. I saw the text myself. Okay. Anyways, let's go back to the phones.
It's not that juicy.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
No, not at all.
Totally change your perception of both Nida and the politician in question.
All
right.
So this is how rumors get started, Michael.
This isn't a rumor.
See? Terrible. Terrible, guys.
It's the absolute truth. No, it was actually a super anticlimactic story. You're calling from a 5. It's actually the type of story that legitimately should not be in the public sphere, like in any way, shape, or form. You're calling from a 518 area code. It's nothing.
Not even hinted at.
It's not.
No, I mean it should be turned into an extended bit on a post game show.
No, it should not.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I find your mockery of Trump's love for his daughter very disturbing. What's next? The school, the NRA school protection policy. Have you no morals, sir? All right, this is Dave from Jamaica, Michael.
Dave, how are you, Dave from Jamaica? Is that that's your Loghorn? What is it? Foghorn Leghorn voice. Got you.
Yeah, I'm trying a little thing different.
I like it. I like it. I heard it.
Go ahead.
I like it. I heard it. What's on your mind? What do you have for us and the great Nida Kahn?
Well, I was thinking about when it comes to the intellectual dark web and debating these crazy people. I'm not sure. Because I know debates is more about personality than about facts and all of that shit.
Right.
So I'm wondering though, is it better that we spend time mocking them, but mocking with making points and so on and so forth, so we can plant those seeds?
Are you really
Because
genuinely asking me, of all people, if I
ahead.
think that spending time mocking them is? I mean, yeah, dude.
No, I know you're on pro
yes,
mockery, but I think, I don't think, because a lot of people maybe still believe in the whole debate stuff, but I'm beginning to think that makes them look better than that they are. I mean,
I don't know. I think
turn pop culture. Go ahead.
Well, I think that my perception is that it's funny. I think that this whole world, I always say it's the opposite of politics. In my view, politics is basically about driving the turnout of your people, and that pretty much is all that matters. And kind of whatever fraction, minute percentage of people in the so-called middle are essentially irrelevant. But I actually think in kind of these media wars, it just comes down to were there 2 or 3% of people that saw that debate we were playing earlier and thought to themselves, you know what? I think Michael Eric Dyson's point that racism is actually a thing does kind of make sense to me. And if Jordan Peterson has such a sanctimonious little bitch crybaby over that, maybe that undermines his broader pretensions of prophetic revelation. I think that
I hear,
so I
sorry,
think that, I think, and I also think the other thing I would say is that these people, I mean, they're big. So I don't know if we can, I certainly see people and sometimes come across clips where it's like, that's not funny enough to play in and of itself. And why give this person any oxygen? But all of these people, I mean, they're writing best-selling books. They're being profiled in the most important newspapers. You got to deal with them. I think that mockery is important because I also think, first of all, it's fun. And secondly, it cheers your side up. And thirdly, they're playing social hierarchy games. And what you're doing is you're stripping them down in the hierarchy when you mock them.
And not only that, but in addition to mocking, I think there also needs to be a real conversation about how other voices do not get a platform like they do. It's funny because like they sit back and they bitch and complain about how they're somehow oppressed and don't have, you know, avenues and forums to express themselves. And yet, like you just went through, they do. And they get the support of places like the Times and everywhere else to give them latitude and room to do that. But meanwhile, how we were just discussing earlier, when it comes to an issue like Palestine and Israel, or any issue you could take, economic inequality, race, racism, whatever have you, there is such a limited area for certain voices or other voices to come in. And those people still do not have outlets and platforms. Like you literally have to fight. So until we actually really, you know, we purport to have diversity everywhere. So until we actually have diversity in newsrooms, on op-ed pages, everywhere across the board, then we can talk about having spirited debates, because it's not equal right now at all whatsoever.
And also, what about some actual cognitive, intellectual challenge and diversity? I mean, these guys are all in various forms just reinforcing mass biases of anywhere outside of like this room and a handful of college campuses. So a dangerous idea in this culture, Marxism, that's still a dangerous idea. It's a dangerous idea to take on the economic engine of our society and question how it functions and could we potentially design something better. That's a dangerous idea. There's nothing dangerous about bitching about college students and saying that things are as they are because of, pseudo-naturalized explanations. Grisham and Lech, do you guys have thoughts on this? I say debate and mock. What do you guys say?
I would have said what you said about undermining their position, that the mantle they think that they can like sort of reclaim is if you laugh at them the entire time. Look, people watch stuff, and like I think we actually do spend a lot of time in addressing the detailed like rebuttals of what they do, but people also respond to the affect of what they're watching. So I think it's, if we were just dour and acting like it's the thing we're talking about with Alex Jones. Alex Jones knows how to go on the attack and like we're winning, and that's rousing.
And we need to do that. Watch and let me just say, like I just did this conversation with Robert Wright for Blogging Heads. Now, like, and what's funny, like Robert Wright actually is what these people say they. I've just had conversations with two people, with Douglas Lane on Zero Books and Robert Wright, who in totally different ways actually are what these people claim to be. They're incredibly judicious, they're real intellectuals, and they're way more fair than me, as an example. I'll just be totally honest about that. Way more fair.
I thought
right?
I thought your earlier guest, Eric, I could see he was holding back.
Well, he's a scientist. I mean, he's a scientist. But I'm just saying with Douglas and Robert.
Go ahead.
No, just really quick. Like you could look. So I had conversation and you know whatever. It's me, so I let loose on a few lines or whatever. But like these are very sober, diplomatic conversations. On the flip side, and there's a certain contingent of people who just ad hominem, out of context, like. It does not matter. Like, I think that is where Matt is absolutely right in terms of presentation. And there's some people that will respond to the substance. And there's other people that even if I sat up and I said, I have there's people, I don't even have to give you a hypothetical. There's people in the comments who are going to say that Eric Turkheimer is a left-wing ideologue who doesn't do science because he disagreed with one of their gurus. And that's the mentality you're up against. Grisham.
Oh, I mean, just real quick, it's very obvious after watching the most recent debate that, Peterson isn't really used to having to be challenged in a substantial way.
Right.
I mean, he's going on, BBC.
And he's just dealing with like basic fucking liberals.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Goldberg and Dyson are not the most like dazzling people on the planet.
Without a doubt, and he couldn't even hold it. He couldn't even hold it together. I mean, Dyson had a great line in there when he was saying to him, "It's like you talk about these postmodern thinkers. I don't have any idea who you're talking about." And it was the first time that Peterson had been challenged on these,
because Dyson's like, dude, I teach this. What the fuck are you talking about? And he said, oh, that's a hell of a thing to say in a debate. But to ask me to be accountable for my public words. What a black thing of you to do.
I think
so black of you to ask me to explain my terms.
But I think we do need to engage that. You know, I was talking to my friend who's not very political. He works at a major tech company that you're very familiar with in San Francisco, and I was just sort of curious if he had heard of these people, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris. I just asked him because
they're the gurus.
Am I in this bubble, right?
Right.
And you know, I said Jordan Peterson. He's like, no, I don't know who that is, right? And he's like, oh wait. Somebody, my friend just sent me this video by this guy. Oh, that is, and you know, I'm realizing that this is a friend of mine who's a smart person, and he's being exposed to this kind of bullshit.
Young men can't masturbate into shoes anymore. That's a very anti-evolutionary sentiment.
Michael,
we might be tired
crazy.
of covering it, but you know, there's a lot of people who still need to hear the message.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I agree.
Absolutely.
I guess what brought it home for me, which kind of was striking, is when you guys earlier on MR showed Jordan Peterson in the fedora and looking like a 30s gangster.
Right.
And all that came into my mind was like from Wakanda, the Black Panther movie, Is This Your King? Type of moment in my head. I don't know why people follow this guy.
That's great.
It's like, this is your king.
I know, it's embarrassing. No, and that's the feeling that they should have. You know, the way I see it, I think the thing with Peterson is I think there's some people who genuinely like it would be a real mistake, and I think some people really undersell the extent to which he's a self-help guru and a psychology guy, and he's speaking to some like very real emotional pain that needs to be addressed, and I want to hopefully off-ramp people from him to other people who don't have the toxic ideology. But people who are actually like, Jordan Peterson's my guy, he's how I understand politics, they should be fucking embarrassed. They should be humiliated and embarrassed. And it should be the type of thing that you know, like music that you deny that you listen to when you're 13 or something. Mm-hmm. That's the category it should go into.
Public shaming?
I'm the 311 of psychologists.
I'm the snow of right-wing shaman fascists.
But the thing,
not even public shaming. No, not public shaming. I'm just saying through their own exposure. I'm not talking about calling them out or anything. I'm just saying like they should have enough exposure to these conversations where they are just like, ooh, no, I was never really into him.
Right. But that's the key, exposure. And how many of these folks are actually exposed to something beyond their bubble. And that's where we are, unfortunately. Everybody, and that's why they keep going to the same stuff that they can relate to, and they don't need to look for anything else. Right. There's no such thing as like facts or actual information anymore. And it goes back to what we always talk about, Michael, the dumbing down of society. That's
the truth. Facts.
I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what has happened, because back in the day when I was younger and you had trouble with the ladies, most people would blame themselves. They wouldn't go construct this fantasy of, man, these ladies are this and that, and then we're all talking about dragons and shit now. So I don't know what's going on.
If ladies are blowing you, it's because the dragon has been contained by the witch. Think about it. Bitches be trifling. Imagine Jordan Peterson, like that 80s John Cusack movie where he's like outside with the boombox, except he's also like crying and yelling. Like
Which movie?
I don't even know the movie. I just know that he stand outside of some girl's window with a boombox on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Say anything. And he's like outside with the boombox, and he's just like, if you don't come down, the feminine element is out of control, and I'll have to that's to maintain chaos.
He's apparently very vocal and progressive now. He even Cusack.
Right.
Yeah, you're like, who? The guy with the boombox. He
I know John Cusack's
he
good
retweeted
politics.
me one time, and I was like, oh, I was like, it was something very like progressive that I tweeted, and I was like, okay, yeah, there you go. What is this? This is gonna be my.
So you retweeted John Cusack retweeted you, and it was very progressive.
Yes, very progressive. I was like, right on. No, it's good. It's good when you see people, who are, especially people who have large platforms.
I think he's been political for a while.
Yeah, he has been for a long time. But let me have my moment of, Cusack retweeting. There you go.
Well, thanks, guys, for having me on Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever. Thank you, Dave. Dave from Jamaica. Thank you, sir. You're calling from a 781 area code. The applause is dying down, but still going for the retweet by John Cusack of Nida's Kahn's very progressive tweet. And joining us now, you're calling from a 781 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Mike. I think I've called in the Michael Brooks show once before, and I called the Majority Report and failed at a joke, an attempt at Jordan Peterson joke. But
No, it's okay.
Enough of jokes. I'm doing something more serious. Don't worry.
Okay.
So the first thing I wanted to address, I know that Kenny tried to discuss this last week, and I thought I'd take maybe like a stab at it. And that's the topic of like the California Senate primary.
I gotta be honest.
Okay?
We're gonna be on a very short leash on this one, just to be blunt. But go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not going to try and like say which progressives like need to be supported or whatever, but the way I see it is there's two main factors going through my head. The first is that like if the progressives can just figure out which person to back, and get like to 20 to 25% of the vote, they could probably get to second place, like or enough votes to get to the round two, basically. And I think that in of itself is really important because I basically see two scenarios playing out when it comes to turnout in California in November. The first is that you have the options being someone as uninspiring as Dianne Feinstein running against a literal neo-Nazi, which would possibly cause a somewhat depressed turnout on the left and liberal side, while the Trump
I got it.
base
Can I
might be
just?
more
I'm
enthusiastic
sorry.
to
I'm
vote.
sorry, man. I just gotta. I'm not. I just. We're a little tight. I hear what you're saying. I interviewed both of them because Kevin De Leon was just not. I mean, first of all, I'm going to interview one of them. I'm going to interview both of them. I didn't trash either one of them. I didn't have any. They didn't attack each other, and one of those candidates is clearly better than the other candidate. The other thing is that the reality is too that I think that a lot of people aren't taking in, and I wish it weren't so. But like Dianne Feinstein is going to win that race. She is. And there's no scenario where she isn't. So I just think that it's important to
she'll win.
Yeah, she'll win.
I think
definitely.
that it's really important to have high liberal and leftist turnout in November, as well as depressed Republican turnout for not simply the Senate race, but the down ticket races.
I think that there is no indication. I mean, this is the thing that like I don't like to say, but just objectively, this woman has been in the Senate for a long time and is popular with most voters in California. So on that level, and in California, especially with the tax bill, the way that played out with that state, no mainstream Democratic turnout is going to be depressed if Dianne Feinstein's the nominee in November. There might be a handful of Jimmy Dore people that don't want to vote. They probably wouldn't have voted anyways.
I don't think he's saying that, though. Are you?
Okay. Well, I didn't want to stress too much on that. The other thing that I wanted to sort of talk about, I feel like, and this is more just a general topic or theme that have been troubling me for a while, and I feel like since your show tends to cover the issue of ideology, I think that's important because, of course,
okay. So yes. So what is it?
Is about the spread. So I feel like there's this sense that you have an issue of distrust going on between people who oppose conservatives, whether they be more, unfortunately, more centrist or people. And I don't mean like David Frum centrist, but rather like liberal.
I understand. I understand.
And people that are more leftist. And there's this theme of distrust that I think has been a huge issue.
I don't know if it's a real issue. I don't know if it's I'll just jump ahead a little bit. I think it's three things. If I could just, I think that there is a big issue because there's different politics, right? Like people on the left and people on the center or liberals have really fundamental disagreements, which we're going to have to figure out that actually matters. Then I think there's a lot of Twitter bullshit and a lot of social media drama that doesn't reflect most people's real life interactions and certainly not how they'll vote. Like I'm a I'm a fucking socialist. I don't joke about that. That really is my politics. I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote in a way that looks probably totally the same on paper to some like neurotic suburbanite who fucking likes Bill Clinton. I just don't. I think especially when we actually gain power and then the 2020 primary and that, maybe that becomes more, but some of the stuff's just going to have to be figured out through politics. I mean, we disagree. Yeah. I think it's stupid for people on the left to think that people in the center are more of a threat to them than people on the right. That's a disaster.
Absolutely. But do you think
I guess I'm afraid.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, I'm afraid of, and maybe you're right that it's more just an illusion of the exacerbation caused by social media, but it really comes off like I get the impression that there is just still this discord, this wedge that's still driven, to keep people separate.
People are separate in terms of they have different politics.
Like you said, like different actual views on policies.
Barry Weiss and I might vote the same way. But we look at things radically differently.
Right, but let me ask you, Michael. Actually,
let me be clear. I don't think Barry Weiss even votes.
I mean, whatever. Fuck her. But you got my Neera Tanden. Okay, what? Yeah.
But do you think that like I guess to the larger issue of like what happened in 2016 with like the Bernie and Clinton split, do you think that has actually been resolved enough going forward in the midterms? And in 2020, because I think that separation and that rift still does exist to a large extent.
But again,
the
numbers were that like, what was it, like 10% of Bernie voters didn't vote for Clinton.
More Bernie people voted for Hillary than Hillary people voted for Obama.
Right. Significantly more. Like 25 versus 10%, I believe the numbers are.
Right.
So I think that there's a mixture. I think that there's definitely people. And again, it does seem to be an overrepresented social media thing. Like some people are apparently like Philip Raines. I never even heard of him. He's some Hillary Clinton guy who wants to move to Vermont to run against Bernie Sanders. Like I couldn't describe that as anything other than mental illness. I don't even know if that's like centrism. That just seems like a incredibly troubled weirdo.
Not even centrism. But I'm pretty sure the Democratic Party wants Bernie to stay in power.
But I think that like the broader like, I'm sorry. I thought I muted for a second. I didn't mean to lose you. I'm sorry. But I think that, I don't know. I think that in the deeper sense, yes, because there's a fundamental disagreement in terms of what the party is and what it represents. And that's not going to be glossed over. Right. And that's an active conflict. In terms of most people getting out and, voting, I don't think so. Because I actually think it is a conversation where you could say, there's a Philip Raines of the world who's a fucking lunatic who's going to go to Vermont to challenge Bernie. And then I think there's some people who, they basically went to like the Green Party or some other trivial political pursuit. And they're not even, there's some people that I see constantly tweeting and bitching about Democrats and like, they're not involved in that process. Right? You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess I think it's a little overblown.
I don't know. I mean, I hear you. I think to a certain extent it is overblown, and people like, Trump and the GOP are obviously going to enhance that more and try to make it seem bigger than it is. But by the same token, I do see that a lot of the issues have not been resolved. And I don't think that is necessarily going to keep people from staying home and voting, because they see what sort of a threat is what's actually happening now that you do have the GOP in power and all these folks in power. So they are seeing the results of that. So I don't think that people are going to stay home just because of that. But I feel like there still needs to be some sort of, I don't know if the word is reckoning or something.
House cleaning?
Well, or maybe not even house cleaning.
Well, house cleaning is a win, right? That means we win. That's what we're working towards.
Right.
I don't like. To me, I don't know what a reconciliation.
Because I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like when the DNC, when all that drama was happening with Keith Ellison
Right.
and Perez, like,
Right.
and the way that, Ellison and all these other progressive folks were basically pushed out of the DNC, and then they made sure that, a more establishment, even though he's still obviously much more progressive than a lot of other people, but they made sure that the establishment guy, the one who
Right.
worked for Obama, the one who did all this other stuff, was in there. So I feel like the progressives and the liberals still feel very much so left out of a lot of this and a lot of, out of the process. And there needs to be some sort of reconciliation to bring them in a little more. I'm not
But I
saying
think
that
that's
they're
only
going to
happen through power.
but-
I think because I
Right.
think like this perfect example. Like Keith Ellison got muscled out through power,
Right.
and they're gonna get their position through power. Now, like, does the Democratic
How does that
Party
happen, right? That's the question.
structurally favor one group? Like, those are serious questions. But like, I don't know. Like, I don't see like. I mean, that's actually a pretty good example of it.
Mhm.
They snap to attention because let's be real too. Like Keith Ellison is a fucking congressman.
Right.
Nobody was trying to get like Amiri Baraka to be
Right,
the head
right,
of the DNC.
exactly.
like it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
if they can't even
So-
do that,
right.
there's going to be differences. I think people could make this a whole lot less petty in general, and people are constantly looking for like little relatively trivial things to beef over, and that would probably be better if it didn't happen.
Right. Absolutely.
But
Because
look,
one thing
but
that-
there's big fucking disagreement. But on the other hand, like I'm not gonna. Like, some people tell me like, like it's time for you to like embrace, and I really thread the needle because like I don't really trash Kamala Harris as an example. I don't really trash these people, but at the same token, I'm not gonna say like, oh well, yeah, they're really like she's not.
Yeah.
She's a fucking prosecutor that supports AIPAC. We have different politics.
I know. Well, on some issues, she's been.
But it's not.
progressive.
But it's structure.
I
Like
think-
Bernie Sanders structurally is diagnosing in his own flawed way, but he's the only one with the closest to like. He gets it. He gets
Right.
structurally what's going on.
Right. But I think there's a way. Me personally, I think there's a way to push whoever it is that is
Sure.
elected to hold them accountable and to make them more progressive on whatever issues you care about, as opposed to just saying, oh, fuck the whole thing. And I just remember
agree.
we can curse on here.
I
that,
agree.
Fuck the whole thing and just sit it all out. I don't believe in that, because if you look at Republicans, what they always do is they fall in line, regardless of, remember all the people who claimed they were anti-Trump and they were
Well,
whatever.
they fall in line,
always fall in line.
but see, this is the synthesis that I'm trying to find. They fall in line, but they extract concessions.
Mm-hmm.
So progressive left Democrats have fallen in line and gotten essentially nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
So
You're right.
so how do you synthesize like not being, like of course Hillary is better than Trump, like, really basic obvious stuff. But how do you again, and I think it's a case by case basis. I mean, look, I think like it's great that Cynthia Nixon's going at Andrew Cuomo. I think in New York City itself, I think DSA candidates should run independently of the Democratic Party if they can. Sometimes it makes more sense to run in a primary. I have no problem with that either. But I think it'd be very worthwhile to try to look if you could set a distinct, actual left, actual rent, actual tenant union party here.
That
right?
would be fantastic.
Right. So I think it depends. And then then there's other people. They think that because Bernie didn't go all the way, that the whole thing is rigged and done. And it's actually the opposite. They should be looking at it and go, whoa, fuck, what? 70-something socialists like crushed it? Great. This is just the beginning. That's exactly how they should see it.
The glass is half full.
The glass is definitely half full.
Speaking of, I just realized that my glass says Jeb.
You didn't notice that
hilarious.
before?
No, I did not.
Got
you guys are terrible, setting me up.
Got you. We do that to ourselves. You're calling from a 226 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mike. It's Albert from Vancouver.
Hey, Albert. What's going on?
Not too much, man. I sort of wanted to touch on two things real quick. Just I used to agree with you guys so much about the need to debate these guys, but I've been watching you guys do it alone since before you were even on Sam's show.
Wow.
And it doesn't even seem to be working. Their argument against taxes used to be it's bad for the economy, it'll hurt business. Now it's taxes are theft. It's morally wrong. I remember seeing Stuart Varney ask somebody he was interviewing about the economic argument for the minimum wage because he was sick of all the emotion around it. And now they're using emotion on this tax issue. I just don't get it.
I think that's good. I think that's another
debating
revelation of the raw power stakes that I was talking about earlier. I think it's great when you have these people where their public position is, I will take more of your money and steal more because fuck you. And then Ken Langone, which I'm going to do a reading of next week, his new book, I Love Capitalism, which a trusted source sent me a review copy of. I'm going to do a reading of it on next week's postgame. And when some old jackass who co-founded Home Depot and has been a menace in New York City politics has to write some like fucking nonsense self-help memoir because he perceives that like his status as a fucking billionaire is under threat, that's a good thing. These guys are scared. We are the ones with the momentum. There's no question about it. Don't let the muck and the mire, as disgusting and as disturbing, and look, they have the resources, they have capital, there's no doubt, but we have momentum. For sure.
I mean, honestly, 2-3 months ago, I'd agree with you. But just Jordan Peterson, I'm Canadian. Jordan Peterson is about to be the best known, most bought author out of Canada.
Peaked. Dude, he's peaked. But trust me, he'll be. Remember how we joke about Snow on this show? He's going to be the Snow of public intellectuals. Another Canadian export. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but someone else will be along after.
Yes, and that's always how it's going to be until we gulag him. But we got it. Thanks for the call, man. All right, final call of the night. You're calling from a 330 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Ryan from Ohio.
Ryan from Ohio. How are you with the final call of this week's postgame? And we got our Discord questions.
I'm pretty good. I'm not, no jokes tonight. I have an interesting thing to ask you. So do you think that, I mean, we talk a lot about the way that the Democratic Party is changing.
Right.
And, like the way that, the people in power are fighting against, the change shifting left. But what do you think about the Republican Party? I mean, well, I know what you think about them, but what do you think is currently going on with them? Do you think that they're going to basically use Trump as like a sin eater, and they're going to be able to wash their hands of all this shit? A sin eater, like somebody who
no, they're not going to. They are the party of Trump. No, they're the Trump party.
I understand, but do you think they're going to be able to come back from this? Like, do you think that Trump is going to drown the Republican Party? Or do you think that they're just going to be able to keep on chugging on the way?
There will always be a Republican Party as long as there is concentrated wealth and racism. Yep. And those things aren't going anywhere.
And they're getting everything they ever wanted.
Yeah, they're doing great. But the thing is like what Donald Trump did is there used to be some Republicans that they were like McDonald's. They were like, everybody understands increasingly that our food will murder you. How do we diversify our offerings and make it more healthy without alienating our core market? And then Trump came along and was just like, why would you do that? Just order a new quarter pounder deal. And then you double down on everything and you win. And I mean, look, like I do think there's some truth to the fact that demographically it's not a long-term winning strategy, but because of everything from the Koch brothers to voter suppression, they'll be potent. And Trump is the perfect representation of the Republican Party, and they're all on board for it, and there it is.
Well, the definition of what it means to be white has changed so much in just the past, several hundred years that I'm not so sure if I subscribe to the whole demographics or destiny thing.
I don't think they're destiny, but they're certainly very significant variable, and also, I mean, but literally, like, okay, and yes, George W. Bush had a vision. He had a PR strategy, and he put Hispanic voters into play. He actually put Muslim voters into play in 2000. He won Muslim voters. Not all. No, but he won a majority. Is my point.
He won a significant portion. Yeah.
No, he won more than Gore in 2000.
I know.
And I'm just saying that, like, but that's done. That ain't happening. That's over. And there isn't
maybe
like
I'm cynical,
yeah.
sometimes it feels like we're going to be having these same arguments until I'm dead.
We are.
We probably are.
Yeah, we will.
Absolutely.
People need to just like get.
Well
People
then.
need. It's so amazing. It's like on one hand, people need to like cheer the fuck up because there's like so much more opportunity for actual power and delivery than they realize. And on the other hand, like. Yeah, like strap in, bucko. There's always going to be racist pieces of garbage and plutocrats that fund them.
There's that Bobby Sands quote, "Our revenge will be the laughter of our children."
Exactly. Dude, we're like in 19
Well, I mean,
we're like
hey-
in 1900. We're not in 1917. Like we're fighting a battle. Like we're in it. Nothing is ending anytime
I mean-
soon. Of course not.
If I didn't think that things if I didn't think that things could get better, I don't think I would care so much. So
No doubt. No doubt.
Yep.
And I totally get the frustration completely. I mean, I guess that's
It's a very interesting,
that's the part of it that sucks. It's
Interesting
just not
time
going
to be
anywhere.
alive because on the one hand, like you said, things are so dire and serious and disillusional. But then by the same token, I always look at the youth because change almost always comes through young people, and they are much more progressive, much more united, much more just better than our generation and generations older. And so I look to them and think that there is hope for the future.
Children are
Hey,
the
are you
future.
supposed to look to
Let
the
them
youth
lead
when
the
they're so
way.
busy eating
Sexual
Tide
chocolate.
Pods, am I right?
Sexual chocolate. What did you say, Ryan?
I said, how are you supposed to look to the youth when they're so busy eating Tide Pods? Am I right?
But see, that is so wrong.
He fucking nails it with a Dennis Miller.
So wrong.
Thank you.
Bop, bop, bop.
Bop, 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 bop. Thanks, brother. All right, let's go through a few Discord questions and then we're out of here. Does this debate on political correctness perhaps accidentally reveal the ways in which conservatives have always demanded that our complaints about things only can be in the conservative definition rather than allow for consistent definitions? So, for example, they only view political correctness as a term that applies to minority groups. Yeah, I mean, with a more consistent definition of political correctness would be about any of sensitivity in their subject. Absolutely, of course. Question from Dissonant Peasant. Many great fascists were mediocre artists like Hitler and W. What failed creative endeavors do you think Jordan Peterson engaged in to prepare for his career as a professional bullshit spinner?
Podcasting?
Wasn't there... Wait, I thought Jordan Peterson... I thought in that New York Times profile he had some type of rug that he spun or something. I don't remember. I'm sure.
That's
I'm
probably a
sure he
metaphor.
does spend a lot of time, like a lot of time, like pottery pots, thinking about rape and chaos and crying. I mean, I really am. Like, I have to say, the part of me that respects Jordan Peterson is like, if you were setting out to like restore masculine vitality to the world, I would not think be like a histrionic fucking lunatic would be like literally like a 1950s stereotype of a hysterical woman. Like he could play the woman where you're like, God damn it, get a hold of yourself.
It's like
and yet like he the chaos of the individual. You just want to like smash like, calm down.
You imagine like Jordan Peterson be like, you criticize my toxic masculinity. And I'm like, no, your masculinity, like nobody even notices it, dude.
Yeah, dude. I would actually recommend, as my Jungian analysis would be that you should increase your toxic masculinity significantly.
That's your advice?
To Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
And well, my advice in
Yes.
general, my counter Peterson advice has been take a run, read Marx, and listen to Dipset.
And increase your toxicity.
And I would, yes, and so listen to Dipset. So I would for Jordan Peterson, I would say maybe take some B vitamins because he looks a little sad. Listen to Dipset, take a run, and take Michael Eric. Remember Michael? I love Michael Eric Dyson did. And Michael Eric Dyson, of course, it's like totally his move. He's just like, I'll take you to a black church, and like what it's like. Any skillful debater outside of this like fucking horrid nerd world that these cretins emerge from would be like,
tell us how you really feel.
They would. I will. They would be like, oh, I'd love to go with you, Dr. Like, even you could see, like, Stephen Fry, like, he's laughing. He gets, like, the joust of it. And Jordan Peterson just sitting there, like, I will not go to a black church, you son of a bitch. like sitting there, was, like, fucking about to cry. Oh, okay. I'll read, send me the Michael Flynn thing again next week. For real. Given that the teaching techniques are still pretty much the same for most of the world, wouldn't that affect on how malleable intelligence is? I think so, and I really like Eric Turkheimer, and I didn't want to challenge him on foundations because I wanted that perspective, but I still do have more foundational questions about things like IQ as a metric in and of itself. Question from Nam Dnet. I'm currently engaged in door-to-door canvassing for my local election, Ontario Provincial Legislature. The NDP, which is the New Democratic Party, I believe, is actually within shot of winning a majority of the government and relegating the governing Liberals to a single seat. This is a very real possibility. The path to victory is peeling off scared Liberals and jaded Tory voters akin to Obama voters that voted for Trump. Are there points of method you would recommend for swaying a Liberal or Tory voter? Wow. I don't know enough about your landscape. My instinct is always talk about economic issues. But maybe what you would say to those two different voters would be different. That's a really interesting question. Follow up with me on the Discord. I'll look into that more. Comment from Attorney Andrew, because we have a LeBron shout-out tonight. I have another basketball politics analogy. On top of HRC being the Greg Monroe, who again in 2018 proved himself useless, and Phil Jackson being the third way, Russell Westbrook is technocracy. Like technocracy, Russ gives you lots of activity that people confuse with positive production. He's constantly running, yelling and flailing his arms, yet most of his activity leads to inefficient results. His most frequent shot is a pull-up mid-range jumper, which is the least efficient shot in basketball. Also, like technocracy, he's terrible at defending anything. Ooh. Matt Leck, defend your boy.
First of all, those mid-range jumpers are beautiful, and when he wants to play defense, he can play defense.
Geg and Soul, are you aware of the meteoric rise of the Egyptian Mo Salah in the English Premier League? And do you wish him and Liverpool FS success in this weekend's Champions League final? I'm not one of these like Orangina drinking like, ooh, soccer. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm sorry. I have a friend here who I know. I have a comrade and friend who totally is that guy.
Don't you mean football?
He's totally like, we're watching World Cup at a Guatemalan bar.
We're getting up at 8 a.m.
We're getting up at 8 a.m. and we're going to be taking in the game with El Salvadorans. It's a cultural experience. Hey, Michael, have you watched Pacman's expose yesterday about Reza Aslan and his criticism? No, I have not. And I'm never going to comment on David Pacman and Reza Aslan. I mean, maybe in the Discord privately. But honestly, whatever. It's no secret. I've worked for Reza. I know David. I'm not terribly interested in that. I'm sure there's legitimate criticisms of Reza. I'm also sure that there's some things that I think Reza probably has a better understanding of than David. I'm not really interested in getting in the weeds of that.
It's a very diplomatic answer. Yes.
Well, I save the diplomacy for people in my circles. Other people are cretins in need of toxic masculinity.
Say what you want.
Yeah. Nida Kahn, how can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter. It's Nida Kahn NY, so that's NIDAKHAN NY.
Thank you so much as always.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
We'll see you again very soon. David Grishcom, thank you. Matt Leck, thank you. David Slavic, thank you. Thank you all patrons this Sunday. Black Marxist Tradition with Bill Fletcher Jr. Not sure on this week's Woke Bros yet, but more coming at you soon with me and Big Waz and so much more calls, Discord Q&As, all of that. Thanks, everybody.